we are back with part 2 of this week's reading of the Messianic Jewish Family Bible Tree of Life version, TLV, and we are in Exodus chapter 16 through 24. I had to pause it. My counter said actually 31 minutes, and it really was not 31 minutes. It was about half of that. So I don't know what's happening with this online recorder. It's very interesting every time I record. So we're going to now, we were in chapter 17 as we paused, and we read the first part of chapter 17, and we're going to read the second part now, which is entitled War Against Amalek. Then the Amalekites came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men, go out and fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Now, that's also known as the rod of God. So Joshua did as Moses said and fought the Amalekites while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. When Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. So when Moses held up his hand with the rod of God, the staff of God in it, Israel was winning. But when he let down his hand, the Amalekites prevailed. So then they were losing and the Amalekites were winning. Moses' hands grew heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat down. Then Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on each side, so his hands were steady until the sun went down. So otherwise, he could not hold his hands up. He could not hold his hands up all that time while they were battling. But by propping his hands up, he actually could keep his hands up. And Israel, of course, when his hands were up, Israel was winning. So Joshua overpowered the Amalekites and his army with the edge of the sword. Adonai said to Moses, "Write this for a memorial in the book and rehearse it in the hearing of Joshua, for I will utterly blot out the memory of the Amalekites from under heaven." I want to pause here for a minute. As you're going to learn, Joshua is going to, in time, become Moses' successor. So Adonai is already telling Moses back here in Exodus, the early part of this wilderness journey, to actually speak the words that you're writing to Joshua, because Joshua is going to take them when he takes over later on, and he's going to rehearse all of this to the people. He's going to recite it back to the people from the time that they were taken out of Egypt, out of bondage, what God has done for them. So he wanted Joshua to be well versed in it as well. And as far as blotting out the memory of the Amalekites, he's talking about the book of life, blotting them out from memory under heaven. Then Moses built an altar and called the name of it Adonai Nisi. Also, in other Bibles, it's Jehovah Nisi, and it means the Lord our banner. And again, in Hebrew, the J is not pronounced, so it would be Jehovah Nisi. But now, in the Messianic Jewish Family Bible, he is called Adonai Nisi, the Lord our banner. Then he said, "By the hand upon the throne of Adonai, Adonai will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." So that's chapter 17. We are now going to go into chapter 18, which is Jethro's advice. And this is the beginning also of Parashat Yitro, which, as I mentioned in part 1 before we got started, that translates to Jethro. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian and Moses' father-in-law, heard about everything God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, and how Adonai had brought Israel out of Egypt. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, had taken in Moses' wife Zipporah after he had sent her away with her two sons. She did not go with him back into Egypt. He actually sent her back to be with her father, and she took their two sons with her. And the two sons, one was named Gershom because he said, "I have been an outsider in a foreign land." And the name of the other was Eliezer, and this one is spelled Eliezer. You're going to find Eleazar is also spelled a different way with an A. The one high priest, as we're going to learn later, his name is spelled with an A. But Moses' son is spelled with an I-E. So the name of the other was Eliezer because he said, "For my father's God is my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh." So that's what Gershom and that's what Eliezer means. So Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife to Moses into the wilderness where he was encamped at the mountain of God. He had told Moses, "I, Jethro, your father-in-law, am coming to you, along with your wife and her two sons." So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, then bowed down and kissed him. They asked each other about their welfare and went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law all that Adonai had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, as well as the, the travail that had come upon them along the way and how Adonai delivered them. Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness that Adonai had shown to Israel, since he had delivered them out of the hand of the Egyptians. Jethro said, "Blessed be Adonai, who has delivered you out of the hands of the Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and he has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that Adonai is greater than all gods, since they had acted arrogantly against them." Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, presented a burnt offering and sacrifices to God. Aaron also came along with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. The next day Moses sat to judge the people, and they stood around Moses from morning till evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did for the people, he said, "What's this you're doing to the people? Why sit by yourself alone with all the people standing around from morning until evening?" Moses answered his father-in-law, "It's because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have an issue, it comes to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor. So I make them understand God's statutes and his laws." But Moses' father-in-law said to him, "What you're doing is no good. You will surely wear yourself out as well as these people who are with you because the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone by yourself. Now listen to my voice. I will give you advice, and may God be with you. You represent the people before God and bring their cases to God. Enlighten them as to the statutes and the laws, and show them the way by which they must walk and the work they must do. But you should seek out capable men out of all the people, men who fear God, men of truth, who hate bribery. Appoint them to be rulers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Let them judge the people all the time. Then let every major case be brought to you, but every minor case they can judge for themselves. Make it easier for yourself as they bear the burden with you. If you do this thing as God so commands you, then you will be able to endure, and all these people will go to their places in shalom. So Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. Moses chose capable men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands and hundreds, fifties, and tens. They judged the people all the time. The hard cases they brought to Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. Then Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went on his way to his own land. We're going to go into chapter 19, and that is titled Theophany at Sinai. And theophany spelled Theophany, and that means a visible manifestation to humankind of God. In the 3rd month after Bnei Israel had gone out from the land of Egypt, that same day they arrived at the wilderness of Sinai. They travailed from Rephidim, came into to the wilderness of Sinai, and set up camp in the wilderness. Israel camped there right in front of the mountain. Moses went up to God, and Adonai called to him from the mountain, saying, "Say this to the house of Jacob, and tell Bnei Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now then, if you listen closely to my voice and keep my covenant, then you will be my own treasure from among all people, for all the earth is mine. So as for you, you will be to me a kingdom of Kohanim." And Kohanim means priests and a holy nation. These are the words, which you are to speak to Bnei Israel. So he was making a covenant with them, that they were to be his people, a Kohanim, a priest of holy people, to stand above all other people, that he drew them to himself. So Moses went and called for the elders of the people and put before them all these words that Adonai had commanded him. All the people answered together and said, "Everything that Adonai has spoken we will do." Then Moses reported the words of the people to Adonai. Adonai said to Moses, "I am about to come to you in a thick cloud, so that the people will hear when I speak with you and believe you forever." Then Moses told the words of the people to Adonai. Adonai said to Moses, "Go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow. Let them wash their clothing. Be ready for the 3rd day, for on the 3rd day Adonai will come down upon Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people. You are to set boundaries for the people all around, saying, 'Be very careful not to go up onto the mountain or touch the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain will surely be put to death. Not a hand is to touch it, but he will surely be stoned or shot through. Whether it is an animal or a man, it will not live. When the shofar sounds, they may come up to the mountain.'" Then Moses went down from the mountain to the people, consecrated them, and they washed their clothing. He said to the people, "Be ready for the 3rd day. Do not draw near your wives." In the morning of the 3rd day, there was thundering and lightning, a thick cloud on the mountain, and the blast of an exceedingly loud shofar. All the people in the camp trembled. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the lowest part of the mountain. Now the entire Mount Sinai was in smoke, because Adonai had descended upon it in fire. The smoke ascended like the smoke of a furnace. The whole mountain quaked greatly. When the sound of the shofar grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him with a thunderous sound. Then Adonai came down onto Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain. Adonai called Moses to the top of the mountain, so Moses went up. Then Adonai said to Moses, "Go down and warn the people, lest they break through to see Adonai, and many of them die. Even the Kohanim who come near to Adonai must consecrate themselves, so that Adonai does not break out against them." Moses said to Adonai, "The people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for you are the one who warned us, saying, 'Set boundaries around the mountain and consecrate it.'" Then Adonai said to him, "Go down, you are to come back up, you and Aaron with you, but do not let the Kohanim and the people break through to come up to Adonai or he will break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. I'm going to pause it here and come back with part 3. We're going to talk a little bit about what just happened here in this chapter. It's very, very interesting. So we'll be back with part 3.